Welcome back, my friends, to the show that hopefully never ends. We're so glad you could come.
Welcome back to episode 223. We made it.
We made it.
This is probably the last one, right?
You know, you got to end sometime. Let's go out on top.
Just kidding, folks. No, we're glad to be back. Now, if you're listening for the first time, you're going, what are they talking about? What are these people doing with this weird title? So what is InObscuria? Well, it's an exhumation of obscure rock and punk and metal, and then we'll put it into three categories, either the lost, the forgotten, or the should-have-beens. So every week, we're going to take something from my personal collection. We're going to go to the Ouija board, or to the seance, or to the Magic 8 Ball. We're going to see what it tells us to go down to the crypt and get, and I'm going to dig it up, and then I'm going to play it, and my co-host, Robert Harrison, may or may not know what the hell he's listening to.
I really hope so, because it makes me look slightly more intelligent when I know at least 1 out of the 6, or 1 out of 7. I'm really positive today I'm going to know 1.
We'll see.
We'll see.
So my name is Kevin Williams. Just a little bit about us before we get going too far here. We're both musicians. We've been in several bands over the course of our lives, and I am an avid fan of just music in general. And I have I've spent way too much money and have a pretty large collection of music, and that's the whole reason I want to do this podcast, to get some of those tunes out to folks who may not have heard this odd collection that I have before. So hopefully I'm turning you on to something, might be turning you off of some things, whatever. The other thing is I am a huge listener of podcasts and have been for the last couple of years. If you don't listen to any of these podcasts I'm about to mention, please do so. They're what inspired me to do this. I've made some great friends over the years just befriending people who do podcasts. So
Go listen to Pod of Thunder, Cobras and Fire, Growing Up Rock, Slamfest Podcast, Decibel Geek, A to Z Radio, Metal Up Your Podcast, The Hustle, Disciples of the Watch, Podcast Rock City, Sean Geek and Fast Fred Podcast, Shout It Out Loudcast, State of Amorica, Rock Strikes 10, Hotter Than Hell, Podkiss, The Kiss Room, Ages of Rock, Retros Us Podcast, and Dude, forget about Monty.
Hey, it's Monty.
Monty's Rockcast.
please visit us at InObscuria.com. Please like us, share, do whatever you have to do on Facebook. Give us some messages. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Come check us out. Robert, give the folks a little bit about you.
As Kevin mentioned, we are both musicians. I am thoroughly retired from that. I have the hearing loss and tinnitus to prove it. The only bands I was ever involved in involved Kevin. So that was a common thread through all the bands that I play with, all 3 of them.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't think I realized that.
I think the one in college, that didn't count. We weren't really a band. We got together for one party, and I don't remember that. So
got it. We didn't know each other then.
No, so it didn't count. But yeah, we've been playing together, but this is once again what we generally do anyway. We sit around and talk around music a lot of times. And Kevin is the ultimate authority when it comes to anything obscure and things that I don't know about. So he's open eyes to a lot of different music. Today we are recording live from the Old Smyrna Firehouse. And if you are curious and bored and want to see photos of where we are recording, it is on Facebook at Old Smyrna Firehouse, and it's also on the Instagram thing. You can look that up there and see some more photos. And we are currently in the Speakeasy upstairs, which is a secret place that we're now telling everybody about.
I think you need to explain where we are and what's going on here.
Oh, so where we are?
This particular room.
Oh, this
studio
room
that we were in.
Well, the story of the Old Smyrna Firehouse dates back to the 1930s, which was the height of the Prohibition. And so when this firehouse was built, I'm pretty sure the firemen were in on the design. And there's a nice lounge space that's kind of carved out that you wouldn't know about behind a bookcase. And this is where we are, because this is the best place to escape to when you don't want to be around anybody. You can come up here and hang out. Our special guest in studio today, as always, is none other than Ronnie James, D.O.G.
Ronnie James, D.O.G.
And I forgot to close the door, so he's going to be wandering around in the background until I can sneak over and close the door.
That's fine, and we call him Dio for sure.
Dio. He is the mascot.
Okay, so let's get into today's InObscuria here. So I got up this morning, I brushed my teeth, I got some juice and some coffee, and then I got out the Ouija board, which is what, I think most people do.
I think before work, that's the normal thing to do.
Yep. And so I was talking to someone out in the yonder, but I couldn't understand a word they were saying. I was like, well, whoever you are being, I need some answers. And the only thing I finally understood out of all this gibberish to me was Japan. So So I got Japan out of it.
Wow, that's really long distance.
Yep. So out of that, I was able to put together, I believe, what the spirit was telling me to exhume.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I didn't have to dig too deep. We didn't go all the way 6 feet down.
Okay, good.
All right.
It's good timing for that.
So what we're doing today is in the should have been category. And actually, I'm going to change it for today. It's the should be. These are groups that should be bigger than they are.
It's not too late.
They're possibly big in Japan. So today we are doing Japanese metal Maiden Mavens.
What the hell you say?
I have two disclaimers before we get going here to really explain what we're doing. So the first disclaimer is typically I don't like to categorize bands by saying they have girls in it. Because I was in a band for about 10 or 12 years who happened to have a girl lead singer. And every time we would play, people would say, oh, you're a girl band.
What's wrong with you?
No, we're a band, and we happen to have a female in the band who's awesome and sings and plays guitar and writes great songs. But we always got categorized. So typically, I don't like to do that. And what am I doing today? I'm doing Japanese metal maidens. And the reason is, in Japan, starting around 2010, there was a movement in Japan for all female groups who have a very, how should we say, almost a new wave of British heavy metal sound. So it's like if Judas Priest were all girls. And this is a movement in Japan. So that way I don't mind doing this because this is a real thing. Mm-hmm. Some people are familiar with baby metal, which they're pretty big in the United States. I think they're now pretty big in Japan. They weren't for a long time. But baby metal is an idol band, which means they have people that write the music. They have a kick-ass metal band behind these three girls that kind of carry on that Japanese schoolgirl kind of look, and even they kind of have a shtick. But those girls, while they sing, they don't write in the music, and they're not a real band.
I call it a show band because it's all about the show and not necessarily about the music.
What I'm talking about, these are bands. These are women that got together to make metal, and it sounds like European, early 80s American metal. I hear Dio.
Yes.
All right, so disclaimer number 2 before we get going. I am not Japanese.
What the hell you say?
What?
I do not know how to speak Japanese.
I'm floored. I've known you all these years. What?
I've never been to Japan. So I'm just going to apologize in advance if anybody does speak Japanese or has been to Japan or knows more about Japan than I do, because I'm probably going to pronounce things wrong.
Oh, this is going to be bad.
I'm naive to a lot of the Japanese culture. I'm looking at it through Western eyes, and listening through Western ears.
That's right, Brian. I finally got something better to do with my Saturdays than sit at the mall and watch Japanese girls laugh at normal conversation.
So I drove to work this morning, and I had to stop for coffee. So there's a Starbucks near my house.
You are a sexist pig.
I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there before we get going.
This is going to be a lesson in phonetics, yes.
Yep. So let's get going. Let's get you into some
I'm ready.
Japanese women-based metal maidens. All right.
I'm looking forward to this now.
I'm using the word maiden because some of these bands have a very heavy Iron Maiden background. They have a very heavy Judas Priest background. It just oozes out of their pores. And when you listen to it, I would tell anyone to go to YouTube because you got to see it. And I'll explain as we go through it why you got to see it too, because your eyes, they'll do a trick on what you're hearing, because you do not expect to hear out of these women, in the way that they're dressed a lot of the times, the music that's coming out of them.
Maybe we can put a couple of links on our Facebook page.
We will do that. It's amazing. All right, so I want to kick it off today with a band called Love Bites, and they're fairly new. So they're from Tokyo. They were formed in 2016, so not that long ago. However, some of the former members are from a band called Destros. So just remember that, Destros, because this will be a theme that comes up. So the reason they're called Love Bites, I just assumed, I remembered a Def Leppard song called Love Bites, and there was also a Judas Priest song called Love Bites, and I thought, aha, I know where it comes from. Well, apparently I didn't know that Hellstorm also had a song called Love Bites, So Do I, and that's apparently where the name for this band came from, because that was in one of their early sets.
Of course, that would
so
be
they decided to call themselves Love
reference,
Bites,
yes.
which is another great band that happens to be fronted by a female. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Love Bites after we listen. I want to get in. I want people to hear what it is that's so amazing. And before I roll it, I got into this through my love of Japanese visual kei. We'll come back to that, but there's only one really, really good visual kei band that I know of that is all female. It's predominantly a male genre, but that band led me to all of these others who were not considered visual kei, but we'll get into that later. So here we are with Love Bites. This song is called Scream for Me.
that was, well, it's two things. It was heavier than I usually hear by a little bit, but it was less cartoonish than a lot of Japanese metal you've played for me before, and a lot of the stuff that I've seen, mostly through videos, where the videos are just outlandish, and that may be part of the culture, but this was more serious rock and roll. It was pretty heavy, and I like that.
It's a little bit different than maybe what some folks may have heard on like anime.
Yeah,
like
that's
Japanese
typically what you
anime.
think of.
You're right, it has a different element to it. And this band just kills it. I mean, I think I counted 4 or 5 guitar leads in that one song.
And that's my personal minimum that I like to have in a song.
I mean, those ladies just kill it. And I actually asked Robert while we were listening to pull up an image of them.
But definitely listen to it first. If you've never seen this band, listen to the song and then pull up the image, because it doesn't exactly match, but I love the fact that they don't match. And these women are serious musicians that would peel the paint off a wall, and their promotional photos don't exactly match that. So
I mean, well, and I think that's a theme that we'll see as we talk about some of the other bands, is they play up the kind of traditional Japanese image of,
very innocent,
of a female, very innocent,
feminine looking,
very
young,
feminine, yep.
And that doesn't
very
always
girl-like.
Very girl-like that you would typically see, but the music itself that comes through is, thinking back a couple of months ago, Kevin and I saw Iron Maiden that we're speaking of, and that's what you would expect from a show like that. A bunch of old dudes that have been, hardened veterans from playing metal for years and years. So it was really nice. As an aside, that show, the Iron Maiden show, was memorable for 2 reasons. First of all, it was an amazing show as usual. Those guys put on an amazing act. You just don't see that these days. It was theatrical. It was fun, but I got to see it with former bandmates, and at the same time, I was passing a kidney stone. While I was at the show. So I was on serious painkillers and a lot of beer to make the pain go away, but yet we managed to have a good time. We took the band van Moose, which we've spoke of last episode, and we'll talk about more, but we piled a bunch of guys in the band van and drove to see Iron Maiden like it was 1984, which I couldn't drive in 1984. But anyway, that should have been a podcast in itself, was just the trip down to the show and back.
I think in future episodes we'll have to invite some of those characters that we had with us at that show. I think people would enjoy hearing some stories from those guys. But getting back to Love Bites, that band, again, they've only been around since 2016, and a lot of this movement, again, it was started in 2010, so it's not that old of a movement for the all-female metal bands in Japan. And this particular band, I don't know if you noticed, but every lyric was in English. That is not the same for some of these other ones. That's different for them. And they don't even speak English fluently. They write all their lyrics in English, and they did that so that they can, I think, try to get into world markets. Mm-hmm. And they've done really well with that. There are other bands, especially when we start talking about visual K bands, that they want to be very Japanese and they want to sing in Japanese. They may throw some English words in from time to time or put odd combinations of words together, be it English or French or whatever. But this band in particular took the approach that some of the Japanese heavy metal bands who did well in the 80s did, which is they're singing in English. And they have played, well, actually, I'll go back and say in 2018, they won the Metal Hammer Golden Gods Award for Best New Band. So if you think about the show of being obscure bands, I think they're obscure in the sense that not many people here in America know about them. Other parts of the world know a lot about this band, and they've played some huge stages. They've played Wacken Open Air, they've played Bloodstock, they've played a lot of festivals, and again, they were the Metal Hammer Golden Gods Award winner for Best New Band. I think the first female band to ever get that.
So this is an obscure band that may not be that way a year from now, 2 years from now.
Exactly, and that's why instead of putting them in the should have beens categories, they should be, and they might be. Mm-hmm. I mean, this band could be huge in a few years.
They've got plenty of time for their drummer to OD and the bass player to run off with the singer's ex and all that good stuff.
What the hell did you just say?
Maybe. I think Japanese culture is a little bit different.
Oh, that's right. I'm thinking of our experiences, so.
But who knows? So I mentioned the first band, a couple of the members came from a band called Destros. And this is a band that...
Was that on Game of Thrones?
It kind of sounds like it, right? So I'll tell you about where the name comes from. So Destros they were considered the pioneers. There's 2 bands that really kind of are considered the pioneers of this movement, and Destros is one of them. And the reason they're considered the pioneers is they've basically split off and formed like 2 or 3 bands in this particular category that are huge now, Love Bites being one of them. So we'll hear this name come up a few times, but I did want to play something from Destros. So they were formed in 2005. So again, I said this movement really got going in 2010. So they were early on, and they were called Destroya with a Y and an A at the end. Destroya.
Yeah, I can picture a certain
The reason,
Paul.
let me tell you why they were called that.
But to stand there,
So
Destroya!
Destroya, and they were named that after the Kiss album,
Oh,
Destroyer.
nice, nice. I called it.
Really good, really good. So then they decided to change their name. They wanted to combine two acts that they really love, which was Kiss and Blue Oyster Cult. So they then became Destroya with a
Huge difference.
Which is
that's
a huge difference.
Completely different.
And then they decided, we want to combine something else we love, which is Guns N' Roses. So that's how they became Destros. So it's Rose at the end, but it's Destros.
I get it.
Clever.
Clever.
See, clever.
Very clever.
Very clever.
It's such a fine line between stupid and clever. Yeah,
It's just a little turnabout. Yeah.
So they did not have a lot of releases, and I think everything was kind of independent. They weren't signed to any major Japanese labels, and it was hard for me to actually find a lot of their stuff. But I did find the first single that they ever released. So this is actually going back to the roots of what's considered this movement of Japanese female metal. So I'm going to play Destros, and the song is Rose of Destruction from the single Rose of Destruction from 2010.
全て生き狂え
She was singing in Japanese, wasn't she?
She was singing
Okay.
Japanese
I was
the
hoping,
entire time.
I was hoping so, because otherwise I was having an aneurysm because
And I
I
don't
didn't
mind.
understand anything.
I don't
didn't
mind.
You know, I don't mind. I didn't understand any of the lyrics, but it was plain to hear the influence in this one a little bit more of your British metal. I could see Bruce Dickinson singing the middle portion where it kind of went to half tempo. That was very much British metal influence. Then you had, of course, the dual guitar solo a little bit later with the harmonies and that influence. So this song, I could tell a little bit more British metal influence. It was heavier than the first one we played, but it was definitely a direct lineage from older British metal.
And again, this was early, right? So a couple of these ladies were in the first band that we listened to in Love Bites. They were young when they were in this band. They were very young. We pulled up a picture while we were listening, and they were just girls. I mean, they truly were girl metal. They started as a cover band doing, the typical Led Zeppelin, Pantera, Man of War, and then Wiki happened to say they also covered Shoya. Are you familiar with Shoya?
No.
Don't show me that.
No.
There was a Japanese band in the 80s called Loudness that gained a lot of popularity in America. And Shoya was one of their contemporaries, but they were an all-female fronted hard rock band. I wouldn't call them metal. They became heavier later, but they were kind of the pioneers when it comes to an all-woman fronted Japanese hard rock metal band. So it was funny that they listed all of these Western bands that they were covering, and then they just threw in Shoya. There we go again. It's a girl band, so you got to play girl band stuff.
You are a sexist pig.
You got to have that one cliche just to say you did.
Yeah, but, hopefully we're breaking down some boundaries here that have been put up long ago that, that females can't rock as heavy as guys. I mean...
We know that's not true.
Did you just listen to this? I mean, amazing, amazing. If you had no clue of what you were listening to, if you had no context behind it, probably the image in your head is not what you would see if you go to YouTube and type in this band.
No, not at all. They're two very different things, both pleasing, but at the same time, two very different images that you probably have from your stereotypical dude rock metal band. You expect to see certain things, and this was not it.
Yeah, and I would say that maybe it's more of a Western thing than it is an Eastern thing as far as having that stigma of who plays heavy music and who doesn't.
Right.
And then the other thing is, I think people, when they hear this, or if they've heard it before and they've seen the image, they're a little bit skeptical. Okay, they make videos and they're on the cover, but who's really playing these?
Yeah, it has to be studio musicians.
Yeah,
they can't possibly be
there's
making
that
all
type
this
of ridiculous
racket.
skepticism. So what I wanted to do is, let's play a live version from one of these bands.
Just to prove it.
Let's prove that these girls can just kill it. So the next band is another one of the originators of the movement that is the girl metal band in Japan. Their name is Audius. And they were formed in 2008 in Osaka. And their original vocalist, her name is Rami. So remember that name. We'll come back to that. Rami.
Got it.
She left the band due to health concerns. And I think only recorded one or two albums with them. And then they got a new singer called Reno. And that's when I discovered this band, was when Reno was fronting them. She's since left recently, and they have another singer. And I'm just going to say it. This band has a knack for picking vocalists who not only can sing their ass off, but happen to be models. I mean, if you go look at images of all three ladies that have sung in this band, it's like they look like a runway model.
Nobody ever said that about us.
It is... No, nobody ever said that about us. There's a reason we're on a podcast now.
Exactly.
But Audius, they totally play up that look too, because they're all very attractive women. They take it so far as to not do the cutesy, but they do like the very elegant and regal look. So they're out in like evening gowns. And then you hear the music. It sounds like Rob Halford and Bruce Dickinson just left to grab a bite and the rest of the band's playing. I mean, I'm
in favor of that. I've seen
phenomenal.
enough, studded wristbands and all the typical leather gear that you're expected to wear with a metal band. So I think it's time.
Let's dive into a live concert from Audius. This was from an album they had called Radiant A Live, which was supporting their album in 2016, I believe, which was Radiant A. And it's one of my favorite albums from them. So this is a song called Luft, and this is totally live, and you will actually hear the chants from the audience. Just, they're going nuts for this band.
きな翼を見つけてどこまでも飛んでゆけると信じていた私だけの空誰よりも高く羽ばたいてゆく太陽さえも手が届くようにその存在を見せてく心どんな壁も壊してゆく星がまた咲いてるように揺れる誰とえなくても感じてる遥かな空を包み込んだ未来の扉を今開けて
look into that and find their booking agent, see if we can get them set up for a show here.
Yeah, we need them here.
I don't know them personally, obviously, but that sounds like a group of really badass women that, holy crap, that is a very powerful song. And I know they have chosen to dress the way they want to dress, and they're not following the stereotypical rule of everything's got to be black and metal looking, what you and I associate with metal. And I'm all for that.
Yeah, and it may be a shtick, but it's polarizing when you see it, because I showed Robert an image of them while we were listening. He's like, this is just crazy.
And this is changing my stereotypical view of what I imagine when I'm listening to music like that, just from 20, 30 years of listening to this music and looking at album covers and then looking at videos and then seeing shows. And there's a reason why this is a stereotype, because the vast majority of metal musicians we see have a certain look to them. First of all, most of them are dudes, so it's nice to see a change. Lita Ford, she was pulling off a nice different look. She wasn't pulling your typical, black leather jacket when we saw her on the Kiss Cruise. She was looking good, and she pulled off her own look, and she was doing her own thing. So that probably is the only example I have of any female woman musician here in the States that is in the metal genre that I can think back to. Even Heart, they dove head first into the metal look with some leather jackets and studs back in the 80s to jump on that bandwagon for a while at least. But like I said, I'm happy that at least somebody's trying something different here as far as the visual look when it comes to the show.
Yeah, and I think, what we proved is this band just kicks ass live. They are playing their instruments, for sure.
That's some serious talent.
Serious talent in the band, and just great. If you're into metal, there's no way you couldn't be into this, even though they're singing in Japanese. People ask me, because I'm really into Japanese music, and one of the reasons I like Japanese music is because they do break down barriers. There are no barriers in Japan. Nothing is taboo. They're an interesting culture. Their pop culture is just anything goes, and I love it, and they mix everything together, and this is just another example of that now happening in this movement of the girl metal bands in Japan. I had a point, and I don't know where I was going, but it doesn't matter.
But it does seem more of the norm to push the limits with them versus a lot of the bands we see that seem to fall into a certain genre. They want to fall into a certain look and be like everybody else. And there's not as much limits being pushed here as it is over there.
It's not the way it works there. One thing I thought was really cool, if you're into drummers, most drummers know who Terry Bozzio is.
And some guitar players, I know.
Yeah, some guitar players. So Terry Bozzio was in Frank Zappa's band. He's done his own thing. He's been in a bunch of super instrumental. He's super technical drummer, great drummer. But his stepdaughter is actually in this band now. She's the drummer for this band now. She became the drummer in, I think, in 2015, which is interesting. It was after they had already had success, so it had nothing to do with them getting success. And actually, I wanted to point out that this band in Japan in 2013, they reached number 7 on the Oricon charts, which is like our Billboard charts. Mm-hmm. So, they've had success. They do have success, and they continue to release albums. Going straight from them, I mentioned that their original singer, Rami, left in, I think it was 2012, due to health issues. Well, in 2015, she came back from her illness, whatever it was, I'm not sure, but she came back and she put together a project called Raglia. And because I knew Audius and I had done some research on them, I found out about Rami. And then when I heard her music, I'm like, oh my God, here's another. They have all these bands in Japan, and they have all these offshoots of members forming these other bands that are fantastic as well. It's amazing, the pool of talent and just where they go and what they do. So it's more of a project. She's a solo artist now, but Raglia was like a project band that she put together, and it is incredible. One of my favorites, just super heavy. I would put them on stage opening, or maybe Megadeth would open for them. I was going to say they would open for Megadeth, but maybe Megadeth should open for them. Check it out. This is Raglia.
意志を強く心に刻み光なんか人なら
That was Roglia. The song was called The Cross from their Breaking Dawn EP in 2015.
One of the constants throughout most Japanese metal that I've heard and what you've played tonight also proves that there's very rarely a doubt of the talent of the individual musicians in the band. You hear the skills. I mean, everything is balls to the wall. The guitars are the fastest and loudest, and the drums, the double kicks, and just the vocals are the highest, the most amazing range on the vocalist. So everything is just all the way. It must come from what life is like in Japan. I've never been. I heard it's crowded, but it's an island. It can't be, that uptight. It just sounds like everybody's just ready to explode if you base it on listening to these musicians here. It's really amazing to be able to go back and listen to it a second time, a third time, and pick up more and more because it's so fast. There's so much to listen to at one time. My brain processing isn't what it used to be, so I miss those brain cells I've killed off after all these years. So, if you have more brain cells than I have, probably you can pick up them in one shot.
Yeah, the technical aptitude that a lot of these groups have is just blows my mind. I mean, being a musician, I've been playing instruments since I was 15 years old, and I've never come close to this kind of technical proficiency.
And so far, the hours they must have
put into their craft.
You were playing musicians that were in their teens and were just absolutely shredding it like they've been playing for 25 years.
These are 20-somethings. Again, the movement really began in 2010, so they're 20-somethings, 30-somethings still. It's just amazing what they're doing. And that song in particular, I love. It has so many movements to it, and the breakdown in the middle, I just think it's phenomenal. It was one of my favorite tunes off that EP. All right, so I mentioned that I got into this, I was turned on to this through Japanese Visual K.
Do you want to briefly describe what you're talking about for those of us that have no idea what you're talking about?
So Visual K, people are like, what are you
Is that a breakfast cereal? I don't know.
All right. K is K-E-I.
Oh, okay.
So Visual K is a genre in Japan. Prior to its existence, bands in Japan, rock bands, hard rock bands, metal bands in Japan were basically trying to be Western. So they would try to cop the look, the feel that the English and European bands were doing, the American bands were doing. They tried to write and sing in English when it wasn't their language, and sometimes that came across kind of humorous.
Right.
They didn't mean for it to be that way, but that's what they were trying. But that was kind of what those bands were doing until Visual K came around. Visual K came from a band called X Japan, and a lot of people have heard of X Japan, although again, it's another band that are huge worldwide, but have never quite gotten to the height of what they do. They're probably the biggest band to come out of Japan ever, just from notoriety and the size of the concerts that they play and things like that. So anyway, Visual K it means visual style or visual system. And if anybody wants to go and Google image X Japan, you'll see why they call their music visual style. They basically took everything that was the glammiest of the glam, the gothiest of the goth, and took it to the extreme. And this was in the late 80s, throughout most of the 90s, and continues on to today. But its entire musical genre, they really celebrate their Japanese heritage. They celebrate being Japanese and being not meant for Western ears, not meant for anyone else other than Japan. And it's just really cool. A lot of the themes of Visual K is very kind of emo. It's kind of very touchy-feely, like overly, everything's overblown.
Right.
They basically, they took glam and goth and just overdid it. That's what they're doing. They even combine like punk rock. They combine new wave. They put it all together and they slap it together with some kabuki style Japanese and put it all together. So anyway, they created this genre, and one of the bands, they're predominantly male bands, and they're predominantly male bands who look a lot like girls. So again, they take Poison and make Poison look like tough guys. It's just interesting, but one of the bands that have come out in recent years is a band called Exist Trace, and they are an all-female visual K band. They can play any style of music that you can think of, and they mix it together, and somehow it comes out some sort of rock. But it's just, they just do this amalgam of different styles. But they were my catalyst to finding these bands that I'm playing today. So I want to play something by Exist Trace. And the song I want to play is off their 2012 album called Virgin. And this is a song called True. Let's see what it sounds like.
getting the full effect without the video, but I imagine it was colorful and wonderful at the same time. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, and it's cool with them if you go get the whole visual of them. I think the front, they have two singers. One of them plays guitar, but they kind of switch off on who's doing lead vocals. And one of them dresses very predominantly male looking to, I think, kind of play up the whole, all these other guys are looking so girly. Well, we're going to go the other way. And then the bass player typically she almost looks like that creepy looking girl from The Grudge. Like, I mean, crazy makeup that must take hours. They're really cool. And if you're interested in, because it is such a visual performance art, if you're interested in seeing the story of X Japan, who, again, kind of birthed this whole movement, go check out on Netflix or Amazon or wherever you get your movies. There's a documentary called We Are X. Go check that out, and you'll get the full scope of how huge X Japan was and this movement that they created that this band happens to be part of.
Would this music be typical for some of the music out there? This was a few notches throttled back from the really extreme speed metal we heard a few examples ago.
Yeah, again, this is Visual K, so it's a lot of Visual K has that, this song didn't have it quite as much, but a lot of them have that very thrash beat, that blast beat, but they're a little more melodic. Whereas the other bands that we've been listening to are kind of more based in what I would call typically European or British metal. You know, that's where these other bands that we've been listening to today have come from. This band is more coming from that whole, we're going to mix everything together. I mean, you even heard at the end and in the middle kind of new metal kind of sound. And a lot of these bands have that.
The heavy breakdown.
They take that breakdown bit that was so popular in new metal in the late 90s and they incorporate that into what they're doing. So Visual K is just the mix, and it's all about, again, the look and the performance. But anyway, go check out that We Are X and you'll get a sense of what these bands are about. All right, so we're going to move back into what kicked this off, which was the new girl metal, female-fronted metal bands in Japan. And this next one is one of the first ones that I got into. And they take the look even further. They're a band called Bandmaid, which is all caps, kind of like Band-Aid, like the bandage that you put on. They're called Bandmaid. And the reason they're called that is because the singer-guitarist, when she formed the band, she was an employee at a Japanese maid cafe. So I don't know if you remember, but Robert, this is kind of a funny story. Robert and I went to an anime convention a couple of years ago. We know nothing about anime, but I
didn't stand out at all. Not at all.
Well, this is funny because I've always loved Japanese culture, but I don't watch a ton of anime movies. I just don't have time. So I never quite I like it when I see it, but I never quite got into it. And so I'm driving down the street in Atlanta where we live, and I'm going past a convention center, and I see all these kids dressed in these crazy costumes. And I pulled in to the convention center. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, oh, it's Anime Weekend, Atlanta. So I immediately called Robert. Like, Robert, put your craziest get up on. We're going to go to this anime convention. And Robert's like, okay.
You know,
do you remember that? You're like, all right,
I
sure.
remember. And it was the time where I started saying sure and yes to a lot of things. And it's been a lot more fun since I did that. Instead of saying, what are you talking about? Why do you want to do that? Yes, just say yes.
So the way these events work is it's cosplay, right? These predominantly kids, you know, it's high school, mostly high school and college kids that go to these things. We were quite a bit older than that. And we're wearing like kind of typical what we would wear to gigs, or I'm
trying to remember.
We just kind of rocked it out.
Boots
we just kind of rocked it out, but maybe took it a step further. And everybody there knows who the person is that they're looking at. You know what anime they're from, or what
it's a specific character.
What character they're trying to be. And we got the wildest looks because you could just tell these kids are like, man, I cannot figure out what movie they are trying to do.
It's that guy from that video game. That guy in the third scene.
We were nothing. We were just walking around and soaking it all in.
Totally out of my element.
Getting back to the band Maid, so they at this convention they had the Maid Cafe, and it's like a thing where basically the staff dresses up kind of like French maids and has that whole shtick that they do, and they serve you in the cafe, and it looks very European, but they're Japanese. So anyway, band Maid, they took that look. They go on stage, they look like French maids. So pull it up on your phone, take a look at it. It's crazy. Yet they sound like this.
Pulling up the visuals after you've listened to it is a lot of fun to see what you were listening to.
Absolutely crazy. That was, again, that was Bandmaid. The song was called Shake That. And when I first heard the song, I thought they were saying sexy, sexy. I'm like, that's weird. But no, it's Shake That.
Nothing wrong with it.
And the name of the album is New Beginning from 2015. Now, this band is actually, they've toured a lot. So Baby Metal's huge in, which we talked about earlier. Baby Metal's huge in the U.S. right now. I want to say their latest album, entered the charts at either 1 or 2, which is amazing.
And I understand that. I've seen a lot of references on social media from my friends that I was surprised that they were listening to anything metal, but it was such a poppy version of metal that I more understand it. Yeah, it was about the show, and it's different for sure.
If you're into that group, that's fine. It's not for me because I just come from a place where I want my musicians to be musicians.
Right.
And nothing against what they're doing. I understand that the tour and just the visuals on stage and everything's amazing, but that's just not my thing. I want a real band playing for me. And this band they thought was going to be what Baby Metal is. They were promoting the two bands at the same time. In fact, they'd actually played together early on in their careers, and they thought Bandmade was going to be what Baby Metal has become in the States and Europe. And they have done really well. I mean, they've played several anime conventions in the States, and they were in Seattle, I believe, in 16, and then in 2019 they've really toured. They've been to Mexico, Hong Kong, the UK, France, Germany, Taiwan, and the States, and they now have partnered with Live Nation. So this is another one of those bands that they may be more of a household name here in another year or two.
Well, I hope so. I hope they keep it going. This particular song you played is more in my wheelhouse when it comes to the music. There's a very broad spectrum when it comes to rock and metal, and the earlier examples you played today were definitely more in the speed thrash metal. There's a lot going on. This was just a few notches back, a little simpler compared to the earlier songs, but it was something that I tend to gravitate towards when I listen to metal in general.
Yeah, I actually thought this one would be more your speed. A lot of the other ones, they do that blast beat, which if you're not used to hearing that, it takes a little bit to get through the blast beat with the melody over it.
Right. There's a lot going on. So this one, just like I said, just a few notches back on the throttle, but it resonated more with me than any other things like Baby Metal and all that stuff where it's just, you're just waiting to have an uplifted fit when you're watching the show. Sometimes there's so many bright lights and everything else going on. There's just too much for me. But then again, I am not one of their target audience, which is probably about, 19?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I actually watched a documentary, and I can't remember what it was called. It was about the whole idol phenomena in Japan, which is a kind of what Baby Metal is, but it's more of a pop thing, a J-pop thing. It's called idol music, and it's predominantly very young girls, like preteen and teens, who go on stage and they sing this pop music and they sing these very happy songs that are supposed to make you feel really good. Like there's a purpose to what they're doing, and they're called idols. And I can't remember the name. If you can go and search for idol bands or something like that on Netflix, you may find it, Japanese Idol. But it's kind of creepy because all of their big fans are these older men.
You are a sexist pig.
Like 30s and 40s men. They follow these girls around.
Yeah, because older men have never been creepy. That's new. I've never heard that before.
They don't portray it in the film as being creepy, but to my, and maybe it's a cultural thing, but to me it comes across really creepy.
Let's just keep that over there.
Anyway, that's idol music. That's not what we're talking about here. So hopefully I have one more song, and it happens to be my favorite band in this genre, who are also kind of ex-Destro's members, a band called Mary's Blood, and they take a little more traditional approach to their look and sound. They look metal. They're beautiful women, and they don't look like men, but they take that leather and studs
a little
kind
more
of
macho
approach.
look. Yeah,
they take that more standard Western approach to their look, and their music to me is just amazing. The singer's voice is a little more raspy than most of these groups' singers, so I tend to like female vocals that have some rasp in it. It just appeals to me. Before we play this song, would you see yourself searching this out now that you know that this is a thing, or is this not your wheelhouse? I'm just curious.
No, it wasn't before, but I definitely would go and look at it again because several of the bands you mentioned, the visuals are a big part of the music. It's hard to separate the two because they work really hard on that. So I would definitely go back and want to see some of the songs we played today by watching videos and seeing the whole package together, and then seeing, what my opinion of it. But listening tonight to just the music part of it, that, like I said, the last example was definitely more my wheelhouse. I would listen to that. The other songs, hey, that's interesting. They're talented. They're badass, much better guitar players than I ever was. But at the same time, it's stuff to me that kind of blends into the background after a while. So I don't find myself looking for things like that. But I was happily surprised with the last song.
Well, I get that, and hopefully I've opened some other people's eyes. Again, this is my favorite group in this genre, or this particular movement. They're called Mary's Blood. This is a song called, I can't pronounce it because it's in Japanese. I had
Just
no
spell
idea.
it.
I have no idea.
Sound it out. No, sound it. Start slow. Slowly.
I don't read Japanese.
Just work it out there. Where's Google? Google Siri. Can you do the Siri thing?
So anyway, this is track 3 of 11. I can't read it, but this is a really great song. Check it out.
'Honest opinion on that one? Truly honest? Well, first of all, it sounded like the first few seconds of a Queen record on the wrong speed, but after that, it it was absolutely blistering. And it sounded like they were in a really nice recording studio that they were paying for by the hour, and they didn't have a lot of money, and they had like 3 minutes left to get this last song in, and they're like, fuck, let's just do it. And they went for it, and they got it. They got the whole song in before the engineer walked out and turned off the lights, and that was it. Now, the funny thing is, I'm saying this, and as I'm saying this, I'm remembering that I was banned from starting songs on stage because I would always start them too fast. And so we had to make a new rule. Kent, the drummer, started all the songs after that because it was just a train wreck, because I always wanted to start the songs faster than they should be. But listening to that, once again, obviously they're very talented, but to me, there's a lot going on. I have to listen to that 3 or 4 more times because my brain's still processing. Yeah. And I'm a dial-up modem between my ears, and that was the high-speed internet just blistering through the speakers.
So you would have had the engineer take the tempo down a little bit.
Yeah, just knock that down a couple of notches. Dude, go have the smoke, come back, and just let's try that. But yeah, like I said, it's no knock against the talent of the musicians. But as I'm processing that for the first time, it's a lot to process.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. I think it's so cool. Check them out, Mary's Blood. I think they're killer. They've toured with, and this makes so much sense to what you just said when I think about who they've toured with. They have toured with Dragon Force, who sounds like speed metal on speed. And they have toured with Marty Friedman, who was the exceptional guitarist in Megadeth for a while, and he was in a crazy band called Cacophony back in the 80s with Jason Becker, and their first album was called Speed Metal Symphony. So it totally makes sense.
I blame
what
him.
You just said.
I totally blame him.
And Marty Friedman's an interesting dude because he was in Megadeth. He was one of those shrapnel crazy 80s guitarists into the 90s, and he loved Japan so much from touring there that he moved there in the 90s and has been there ever since. And he still releases solo albums that are mostly guitar-based albums, but he does it with Japanese musicians. And he toured here in Atlanta a couple of years ago, and we saw him with his band, and they were all from Japan, and they were just amazing.
That's not a cheap place to retire either.
Oh man, and he's fluent. He speaks Japanese. He's on I think some TV programs, and
really,
yeah, it's really it's a cool story. Go look it up.
Now, where else are you going to hear that except for here? Nowhere else are you going to find out that kind of information. That's fascinating to me. I had no idea that he was that into it.
Yeah, man. So depending on where you're from in the world, maybe not so obscure.
This is an obscurity to us.
Yeah, if you're here in the States, mostly in where we live, which is the Southeast in Atlanta, Georgia, this is very obscure. Now, it may be our age as well, so it may be that we're just not in the know, and if we were centennials,
bring that up.
We don't
know how we are. They don't need to bring that up.
But anyway, I'm hoping that I've turned some folks onto something they didn't even know existed. Again, go and check it out. A lot of these groups work really hard on their visual aspects, so go check out the groups with the visuals on YouTube. Anything else, Robert, before we get out of here?
I think there is.
What is it?
April Fools.
What the hell you say?